basically. So I only printed that top page, so.
Okay. I got it.
Good evening and welcome to our work session on the 24-25 budget for the city of Radford. We will waste no time, we'll jump right into it. David, what do you want to guide us down the path for?
Okay, no presentation or anything tonight, so I figured I'd keep you all on your toes. We'll talk about a lot of different stuff. Mostly just wanted to go through, you've got a preliminary look at everything is, just generally speaking, we've got a balanced budget at $79 million, almost right on the nose. When you're looking at, I would caution you, anybody that's looking at the budget as we're going down the road the next few weeks, is while that number is higher than last year, what's driving it up is cost of a couple of things, and that is the electric fund purchase, electric wholesale revenue monies. When you start talking about $4 to $5 million more, that's basically what's driving it up. When you look at all the other categories, we're either level or below what it had been in the past. So that's the big thing there. And then the water treatment increase that we've got is a small amount there. So that's really the two main things that are driving that number. So all the funds are balanced. The whole budget is balanced. So we're ready to start taking a look at it. Overall, we've cut about $1 million out of personnel, and that's positions. It's positions that are just ones that were held and we just pulled out. It also accounts for those that when somebody leaves and it takes 3 more months to hire somebody or 6 months to hire somebody back in their place, that's also included in that. That's probably one of the largest cuts in positions, and they're not, it's not like they're gone forever. They can be put back in if the economy improves, if our revenue base improves, but wanted to just take out all the stuff that's just sitting there. Generally, I don't see any benefit in doing another ERIP. We've done a couple of those over the years. We're kind of at the end of some of those that happened back before COVID. Early retirement offerings, they generally got payout, continued if somebody was 62, 63 years old. They get to work until 65 and be able to still get retirement health insurance out of it. I think there was a 10% incentive on those at the time. I don't see any benefit in those. We just didn't have that many that's in that category. They're either getting close to retiring or have already taken the retirement.
Well, and that wouldn't help us in the short term, which is what we're really dealing with.
No,
This is not necessarily.
You're going to hire the positions back eventually anyway, and many of the ones we've got, we do have a large number of folks that are approaching that decision in their life. They've been with us for a long time, so those will change out. The thing that we've noticed about, and with the wage rate increasing at 4.3%, minimum wage going up, it used to be when somebody retired out that had been around a while, you could hire in at much less. That much less doesn't happen anymore. You're bringing somebody in that's got the experience and the knowledge and all that is going to be probably fairly close to it anyway. So we tried to take into account every possible scenario in looking at those positions, and we have a large number of people that are in the part-time positions, and those you don't pay any benefits on. I think y'all asked me about the minimum wage. Minimum wage is going from $12 to $13.50. Once everything kicks in, if we stick with a COLA, we're talking about 20 to 27 employees that may be affected by the additional increase that would need to occur, and that just becomes cents when we get to January of next year. And I don't know if I've seen it, that it has been signed yet. We were looking, unless you all have seen it.
I thought it
there,
had, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think it looked like it was going to be. I don't remember seeing it in the VML report, and it got late last night and I didn't look back to see, but I had not heard that it was not. So I went ahead and used that as our comparison. Let's see. Generally, the things that we talked about in 2 or 3 different work sessions are in there. That was the small increase in the sanitary sewer side. That's to accommodate the increase in the treatment at Peppers Ferry, and also some improvements at the pump stations and in our sewer system. We have not done that many improvements in sewer system. Everything's been in the water. That's curtailing off now, so we should be in good shape water for a long time. Sanitation is level. Water is level. It's just the sanitary sewer. The electric was the big thing that we've talked about. We spent a lot of time on that at the last meeting. That's got the $2 increase in the base rate, and then those wholesale power adjustment costs, which are about $12. And then general fund to balance, go back through that one more time. So we go with our total rate. So $1,288,000,000 is our valuation, up from $888 million. So when that happens, you look at your tax rate, 84 cents, generally brings in $7.8 million. So to bring in the same neutral revenue, you roll your tax rate back, and that rolled tax rate back does look like 64 cents. I was doing different things and I was unsure, but it is 64 cents. So you would roll back to that rate and then add to it any increase that you have. Right now is looking at 4 to 5 cent increase to get everything to balance. We do need to think about that a little bit. If we're not ready to make a decision on that tonight, I do need to know maybe a maximum rate, because we do need to get the advertisement in. I might as well go and tell you now, because this is the first time we've had an increase in this significant an increase. Anything that goes up 101% of your assessment, then you have to advertise differently. And that advertisement is 14 days instead of the 7 to 10 days, no less than 7 days. And we usually have about 10 days in our advertising. So to get the 14 days, it's not going to hit the 8th as originally planned. We probably need to go to that next week, and that would be Monday. I know it's Planning Commission, so maybe Tuesday night. And then we would have the public hearing, the budget review, and then first reading. And then the next week is regular council meeting, you'd have the second reading.
So you're thinking Tuesday, April 16th, potentially for a special meeting?
Yeah, so it's a week later than normally would be. We can make the middle of the week, and we could do that if you want to. I counted up, Melissa double-checked me on advertising. It would go in the News Journal on Friday, Saturday, both the budget and the tax rate. And when I added 14 days to it, I think I hit the Tuesday or Wednesday after maybe it's Wednesday after the next council meeting. Double-check me, see if that works, and then y'all can choose which one of the days. You can't have first and second reading. This is one of the few times you can't have first and second reading on the same night, even if it was unanimous or the supermajority of 4. It has to go to 2 readings.
And it has to be done by May 1st for the tax tickets?
It needs to be done by the end of the month so that the land book can be certified and the tax tickets go out on the 4th or 5th of May.
So we have a hard end to it regardless of April 30th?
Yeah, that's the way we're set up on a calendar year with our taxes, and that's charter. Was that right on that? So we can make that Wednesday, 10th. That 14 days, the 10th. So even.
Got it in on the 30th.
30th counts. That's Saturday. Friday. So might as well do it the next Tuesday, which is the day after Planning Commission. What date is that?
16th.
If you all met at your regular time at 7, Planning Commission.
You have a full agenda this month?
We have, not full, but I've got a couple items. I'll have the special
I just don't want you all to be rushed, but I mean, we could delay if we went 7:30 if we had to, yeah.
So we're normally out by 7.
It's whatever works on y'all's calendar. It don't matter to me whether it's Monday or Tuesday. You still have, when you do first reading, you can do any changes you want to in the budget between first and second reading. So if there's
As long as it doesn't go above the advertised rate.
Correct, yeah. You just
Whatever we
you set
set as
to whatever the
advertised,
maximum-
that's our max,
Yeah.
no matter what.
And we can dial back whatever, if we find additional cuts or see something different. over the next couple of days. I've been busy today, so I haven't gotten back into it again. I need to ask Calista about a couple little things related to it, but I'll give you those probably by the time we meet tomorrow for sure. But yeah, as long as you don't exceed whatever it is, 3 cents, 5 cents, 10 cents, whatever you want to advertise amount. So it's, yeah, over 64 cents. To roll back neutral to 64 is just a regular advertisement.
But with that 64, we'll probably bring in a little bit more. We won't know for sure until we actually start collecting, right?
It's hard to know until you see collections.
Right.
And then, of course, that doesn't include growth. So whatever growth has happened, tax tickets get ready to go, any of the changes that come in.
And some of that growth wouldn't be reflected in the reassessment, right? Anything that has been completed in the last 6
Pretty
months
much,
or
I'm
so?
thinking whenever I sent you all the numbers on it,
Yeah.
that's probably the deadline that she uses on reassessment. I don't think it goes all the way up to the date the land bill trade.
There's about 6 months of additional construction and things like that that could be there.
Yep.
Okay. And the budget you're working on is currently balanced at somewhere in that 4 to 5 cent tax increase rate.
Correct.
So anything that we try to figure out, if we don't want to do that 4 or 5 cent tax increase, we got to find $119,000 for every penny.
119 is, and some change is what 1 cent equals now. So we've had some growth in that area. So about, each penny generates about $119,000.
So if we wanted to only go up
Yeah, that's a.
1 cent, we got to find about $450,000, $500,000 worth of cuts. 2 cents is $350,000, $400,000, and so on like that. So tonight, you may not be able to fully explain that difference on the general fund side of, I didn't do the exact calculation, but about $600,000 difference that in the taxes that we'll need to take in. Correct? I mean, over last year, based on fairly equal revenue across the board?
What is 119 times 4, whatever that, 119
Right.
times 5, so about 600,000.
Yeah.
A little short of that.
Helping us understand that and then also being able to explain that, I think is going to be important, where most of that is. I know that you had factored in a 4% COLA, and so we got to look at that. I know we need to look at some of the other things that are hard costs, not counting electric. That's a whole separate deal. And we're still going to transfer $3.9 million from electric, right? What will the reserves for general fund, the unrestricted reserves, look like at the end of the budget year if we go to that 5 cents? And what will it look like if we go less?
If we go just like we're doing now, conservatively, 420, almost by $500,000. It's been the highest it's been in 4 or 5 years. That's in the unrestricted for general fund.
What was that number again?
429,679.
So really, almost 4 cents of that 5 cents will end up being reserves, correct? That's one way to look at it.
Yeah, but
I know, but that's,
savings throughout.
when you look at the whole year, looking at that, that's where,
Taking the bottom line and adding 4 cents, 5 cents to it, yes, that's what you would end up with.
and right now, you factored in for us to continue funding the $4 million bond for another year, correct?
Correct. Yeah, we got debt service, debt service on that.
100,000.
345, I think.
Oh, is it?
It's 330. I calculated it at 388,000 if it's at 97 across all funds and at 1%. So times 4, wouldn't that be 388,000 for the COLA increase?
For the COLA,
I'm sorry, we were talking two different things, I think.
yeah.
I'm sorry, dude. Maybe I was thinking of a different number.
I don't want to get the employees.
Okay. I was like, I heard something.
Too excited, so,
Yeah.
4% is built into the budget, and a 1% COLA increase is about $97,000.
Right. So
92 to 97, depending.
So a 4% increase would be 388,000 additional. Okay.
Before we talked COLA, we were talking finance on the bond for $4 million. Is that still around 200,000?
That's what's throwing me out.
Right.
The bond is just over 300.
Just over 300. So that's where the interest rate increase is there.
Interest on 300,
Is that, is that the
Interest on 4
principal? I think
million
it
is the 300,000, so.
330 something.
For the
'Cause we-
year?
We initially had about a 5% payback, right?
And you pay it back any time, so what we don't know is what our revenue is gonna end up being, while we're looking at general fund, which what we don't wanna do is use every dime coming in.
Yeah, and be in the same boat.
Build back up the reserves and then go and pay it off, whether you do it 5 years, 10 years, whatever.
So when,
I gotta see how that piece of it works, because we've got it right now as a note. I need to see if it is convertible into a longer-term payment or whether we have to re-advertise.
do you have to make a one-time payment, or can you make little payments along the way to bring down the amount of interest that you're paying?
After the first, 90 days or something like that, you're pretty free to pay whatever you want to on
I
it.
mean, I'm not saying we'll be able to do that, but if we can,
Oh, love to get
I
rid of it
mean,
quick,
not
quick,
pay
yeah.
all at the end and save ourselves some interest. It may not be very much, but it's still saving on the
The only
percent you're,
debt in the general fund is the 2 schools.
yeah.
We've got debt in the electric fund for the hydro. We've got debt over in the water fund, which is just a little bit left.
We still have
on the
some
College
police
Park thing.
debt for this building too, though, right? Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, this building, but, yeah, but that's the only thing beyond the schools is this building. And the Second Avenue project, which you may recall was the combination when that refinance occurred, to get us that lower interest rate.
And how much is on this building?
The total of Second Avenue and this building together is $7 million, I think.
what percentage is that in correlation with the schools as far as debt?
I didn't bring my, do you remember all the debt stuff? Did I bring it with me?
I forgot your
Find
audit.
it,
It's
yeah.
an audit.
The one school is is down to 12 million, and the other one is
15.
15 something, isn't it? No, that other one's down below 12 million now. That's Belly.
I think the total's
Let me
right
make sure.
around 25, maybe a little bit more, something like that.
Yeah, I didn't bring my summary in here, but Callista's looking real quick. It's these two together. Got, there are 2 bonds on, the one on McCarg is, what's left of it is the 13,935,000. And what's left from the original amount, which was just over 14 million. And then the Bell Heath was 8 and 5, so it was a little over 15 million, right at 14 million. What's left on it's 4.8 and 2 million. So that one's coming on down. So we're almost, see, Bell Heath is getting to the point, while it's still got time left on it for, to 2034 and 2029. 2029's coming up. We're pretty much getting down to significant principal on Bell Heath School. Park's gonna be a while. It's gonna be interest
Long time.
for a good while.
What'd you say we were at on Bell Heath? What was the total?
Calculator in here, 8.1, 5.7 is. Yeah, 13.8, that's Bell Heath. And then McCarg is 14.5.
27.
That's the original amounts, I'm sorry, those are original amounts. So that what's left on McCarg is 13,935,000.
Okay.
What's left on, and if you want to look at this, page 53 on your audit, what's left on Bell Heath is 4, 5, 6, roughly 7 million.
So it's 20 million total. That's better than I thought.
Yeah,
21
it's a
million.
little over 20 million, I think is the total I showed you all. And then the refund is exactly 7 million. That's this building and Second Avenue. There's a small one on the fire truck, about $500,000 left on it, but it goes down pretty quickly. And everything else, like I say, is the hydro finance. Everything together, we've got really low debt. Legal debt limit is 88 million. All are well under 30, well under 20.
I mean, from everything I look at, we really don't have an option because having the float is essential to being able to pay for things as we go. There would be no way to have cash available unless we had the float of some kind, without cutting at least 2 to 3 million.
Transition from this fiscal year to the next is the one we worry about, because all our debt service is in July, so we want to get past that. So if it ends up, we do well in collections in June, and then we come back in, we do well in collections in December, you may want to just drop a good payment in December on, or between then and December on the debt
But-
for the TAN.
But there's nothing in the current budget that is low enough, like, we're not $4 million below what we're gonna bring in revenue-wise to be able to have that float in July of '25 either, right? I mean, there's nothing, even though we could pay it off, we would not necessarily be that much ahead to be able to have that float that year either. Yeah. I want to keep that in mind, because we're trying to figure this out to, yeah, we can pay it off, but it's, the same cash flow issue is still there with the timing of the payments.
Yeah, all right, total balance, here we go, is 28,452,000.
Yeah.
That's everything, general fund. And those are those two big payments, about 800,000 apiece. And those you can see pretty clearly when you go to the school section of the budget. 5.8 million is our support to the schools, and then the two debt services are under that. And that includes 220 also for their capital amount.
And you already have the school's proposed budget in hand, correct? They've already given you that?
Have not gotten it yet. It's due to us by the 1st of April, but in talking with the school superintendent, he said it was going to be level with the past year.
Do you have any indication if they've made any cuts on their end, or is it,
Did not get any.
they have?
information.
Oh.
Yeah,
You
I'd like to
were
know
getting
how
me
many
excited. I was
reserves
like, oh,
they
good.
have and what they've been doing, so. I guess we'll get that.
They have been very successful in the post-pandemic grants and entitlement things, all the things that have been able to come into them have been pretty significant. I do know, and he had mentioned it, as Jesse, you probably know that the contribution we make is significant and it's good, and it's used for part of that match, so.
Well, and that's what I was also going to say is I know we've been very hard pressed on you to make all these cuts and find these cuts. Well, part of our allocation is to the schools, and we might have to have that ask as well. And that is where it would, I mean, that's never an easy thing to say. That's something that, I mean, our schools are some of the most important things that are here, but it is something that I hope that's being considered, because what's good for the schools is good for the city and vice versa. And, you know, that's a tough burden for us to carry all the cuts too. So I just wanted to
Well, and
clarify that.
what was the COLA last year that we gave employees? 7. So I want to also bring that up, that, you know, when we have had years that we've been able to provide a good COLA and to get everyone caught up, we certainly have. But I think that's something we need to consider too when we're looking at leveraging these numbers, so.
Well, and to,
You had me first, Kelly. Go ahead. You had me first.
Before we leave the schools, just, the school amount is 7.8. You know, our overall general fund is 35 million, so, yeah, that's a considerable amount. And then, beyond that, your big things are, you know, public safety is $10 million, of that for, police, fire, 911. Probably, Jerry, okay, Jerry, correct me if I'm wrong. Probably one of the bigger things that's gone up, as I mentioned, there he is. One of the bigger things that's gone up in public safety is just IT, the things that are required back in the 911 area. There seems like there's something constantly there. I mentioned IT and the cost of IT. Post-pandemic has really driven IT. It's cybersecurity. We've tried to get as many things as we can to make sure, since we're an enterprise operation, we have a lot of money flows through the city. We've got to make sure that nobody can get into that and hold ransomware or anything like that. So they're always looking at how improvements occur. On the 911 side, it's been the communications to be sure that, you know, we can reach everywhere in Radford. You can, you know, dial 911 services when you are in the city or coming to a city 911 and not ringing somewhere else. So all those kinds of things are part
of that process. And then Parks and Recreation and the library together are 1.6 million. So it doesn't take long. The biggest parts of your general fund are basically four big areas.
So in regards to the 911 call center, I know that we are going to be collaborating with Pulaski County, and a lot of that was through grants. Are we thinking that we're going to see some savings there with combining our interests?
It doesn't appear that way. We have been, rethinking that, and, Jerry, jump in if I miss anything. We had originally got into the PSAP, which is the Public Safety Communications Division. That looked like a good way to go. And I want to go back and reevaluate. So we're looking at the 911 center that's in Montgomery County, that is Montgomery County, Blacksburg, Christiansburg, Virginia Tech. Is that the ones?
Yes,
Is
sir.
Somebody?
That's it.
And we looked at that originally. It was going to be very expensive for us to get into that because of the cost of debt service and that kind of thing. But re-looking at that, having more conversations with Radford University about what they want to do and what our partnership together, because if we can partner up and save money together and work better together and improve communications, that's a good way to go. And then in addition to that, does that relationship make us strong enough to be able to get some grants here in the city because we're now two instead of one? It doesn't appear that PSAP is going to really be that excited about the city having its own 911. I think they want to see us and Radford University and other partners. Not to say that we're not going Pulaski. The problem that we've got, the main thing we've got, and I think all this is just general information and something we would say to anybody. We want to make sure it is very, very tough to get dispatchers. And that is a very stressful job. And ever since now that they're going to require the, and why don't I let you talk about it? You know, but now that they're going to be required to know all these things. So when you call in and say, my friend, my husband, my wife is having chest pain, they're going to go through a plan to help you be able to start whatever you need to do while our 911 folks are moving in that direction. So
You mean more medically trained than they are now?
More medically trained.
Okay.
Yeah, Jerry, why don't you talk a little bit about
Hey, Jerry.
kind of where Jerry's heading up that with a team over in the public safety area and also involved the fire department and talked to Radford University. Why don't you talk a little bit about that, because that's a big deal for us.
Right. So as we looked at is there's really not a cost savings effectiveness of regionally joining. In fact, it potentially could cost us more money than what we're spending right now. And we lose so many services for our city of Radford. In a perfect world, if we met the model that they're asking us to meet, it still is probably going to cause disruption in services. When you have it in-house, it definitely increases our response time and a lot of things that you just don't realize. We have employees here that these communication officers do more than just answer the phone or the radio. Walk-in complaints and those kinds of things are stuff that they deal with day in and day out. So it would leave us short, and we would end up still having to backfill some of that. Some of these state mandates that were sent out with this, the idea that if you call 911, somebody's going to talk you through CPR. The good thing for us is, we're a small city. We're 9.2 square miles. With the time the dispatcher receives a call and has the ability to share that information, our fire and EMS and police officers are there within a few minutes. Mm-hmm. There's just some concerns when you take something that is here in our city and you put it about 22 miles away. If we have to drive paperwork over there or pick up paperwork, round trip is 50 minutes, and that's if we don't stop or have more than just a exchange of papers. We've explored some different options. There's several committees that have met. But the thing that we've looked at, geography is an issue for us. I even mentioned that as opposed to having this in the town of Pulaski, having it in our dispatch center, we have a state-of-the-art center. We have a lot of the facility structural demands and infrastructure that they need. But, I'm one person on a big committee. And so when we look at it from a whole, probably the best idea that we've come to collectively is after speaking with Chief Plummer at RU and, Chief Haywood, is that leaving the city of Radford with a dispatch center creates a hardship for our citizens, our police officers, and our fire and EMS. And having a regional effort with RUPD might very well be the answer that we need to satisfy some regional efforts. And quite honestly, there's times when we get calls that are campus property that are not on campus, and it takes minutes to diffuse that. If we had a regional center and had an RU dispatcher and a city dispatcher sitting side by side, they could very easily communicate that. Yes, sir.
Can you tell us the difference now between a dispatch from RU and from the city? So when would a 911 call go to RU dispatch rather than you?
There is never a 911 call that goes to RU's dispatch center. They either go to Montgomery County, the city of Radford, or Pulaski County, depending on which side of the street you're on. You can really depend on that. And that's some of the technology upgrades that we're facing, is that if you call 911, you may not, you could maybe hit the Monroe Terrace Tower as opposed to the one in Fairlawn.
Right.
So that's going to save some time. But the idea of something happened in our city collectively, RUPD, Radford City Sheriff's Office, and Radford City PD would be the ones to respond. If we're lucky, there might be 1 or 2 deputies in Pulaski County. And having the ability to communicate on the same channels and even share the same information real time, as opposed to having the center 22 miles away with them answering fire and EMS for the county is a huge concern of mine. I don't know what the answer is right now, but I would love to see that potential. This summer, we can collectively put the 2 centers together, RUPD and us, and just see what it looks like and what it's going to take to make it work.
What I was thinking, because there's not a whole lot in this year's budget other than some IT pieces for our dispatch, it probably makes sense to revisit this as a work session maybe in May, June. Does that make sense? Is that enough time?
The one thing I will share is that I know the grant that was received at the regional level has a clause where it has to be done by a certain time. And so that's maybe a factor, ultimately.
What's the deadline for that, though, like September or something?
I'm not 100% sure. I don't want to tell you incorrectly, but yes. And so that $1 million grant, it could very well be dependent on if we join them or not, too. I just don't know enough about this grant. It all was done prior with the board and so forth. So, yeah, that's the things we're looking at. We're not trying to rush it. We want to make a sound decision. There's really 4 options. We've looked at joining Montgomery County's NRV 911. We've looked at Pulaski County. We looked at us and RU, and then just remaining the way we are. But with the cost of technology and some of the things that these state mandates are, we kind of wish we had a crystal ball to predict what's the next set of problems for us. I can share with you that we're 40% short in our dispatch center, and we're very competitive. My concern is, even at a regional level, how do we even attract enough people that's going to include fire and EMS for an entire county, 2 different police agencies or 3 different police agencies in that county, and our, the city of Radford stuff.
Well, we got a lot of work sessions coming up. Could we potentially bring this back as a discussion? Once you get some dates, like what's the deadline date for the grant, so we'll know if we're up against that, and then what a timeline might look like if we wanted to explore 3 options, so that we'd know what we have, whether we stay alone, go with Pulaski, or go with Radford. If I'm not mistaken, having known this for a little while, the Montgomery thing is so expensive, that's probably not even on our radar, right?
I will share with you that I was in a meeting where they provided us with what they called hypothetical numbers. And the cost of joining Montgomery County or NRV 911 was cheaper than the hypothetical cost at Pulaski County.
Okay.
And it's established.
Well, that's new information then.
Good to know.
Because my understanding was the Montgomery was going to be like 10 times the cost of the Pulaski one.
No concrete numbers, but an estimate of roughly about $800 and some thousand a
Okay.
year.
Well,
We're at 1.14, 1.15.
Yeah.
Is our amount for just the 911
So-
piece at this point. So the other thing that's happened, Mayor, is that the cost of 911 has gone up for us
Sure.
internally. So when you compare that number back in the day, it seemed like it was more reasonable. And of course, the state was putting more money into your local 911 centers, and then they got into the regional aspect of it. The similar thing's going to happen in Pulaski, because Pulaski's going to have Pulaski County Sheriff's Department. They're going to have the town of Pulaski, town of Dublin. So they're going to have the 3 agencies that are going to be in there, and we're just going to be one. So when you're looking at how the voting works on that part, same thing in Montgomery County, where you've got the 2 towns and the county and Virginia Tech involved. It seems logical for us to take a look at how Radford University can at least put together, and that's not saying we won't go to either one of the other ones. We're going to look to see. Sometimes you pay as much or more, but you're more cost effective. The problem that we've got, and the worry that we have, is we've got such good seasoned dispatchers. We do not want them to leave us because they don't want to make a 20-minute drive And going back to Jesse's comment earlier, you got to do, we're trying to do, the 4% we think keeps us competitive because we don't want to lose our firefighters, we don't want to lose our police officers, we don't want to lose our dispatch folks or anybody. It's hard enough to compete now, so, you know, we're a little under what the others are doing, but the others may be in a little bit better shape. So we're trying to do something to keep us regionally competitive. But I think what Jerry and his team are looking at, I think looks good, and we'll have more details for you. Deadline sometime this summer, I think. So
Okay.
you know, if we do it like maybe our first meeting in May.
Okay.
We do a
Well,
work session.
the other piece on this, I know that Blacksburg and Virginia Tech and Montgomery County were changing their radio systems, so they were all on the same digital radios, but that's different from what we were looking at the time. Is that going to be a big expense if we do decide to go with them, where we'd have to change all that over?
Correct. So initially, in the initial phase, we would be fine, but if they continue with their project, that's how I understand it, but it doesn't necessarily mean that's how it's ultimately going to be. But I don't want to quote the number, but it was an astronomical amount, like $18 million or some crazy amount.
That's the thing I'm worried about, that it's a great idea, but I would hate, again, let's say we did combine dispatch that were on different radios, and we can't communicate at some point, or we've got to find $10 million or whatever to do that. That's the only thing. There's a lot of moving parts with this, so it sounds like we need a good work session to look at all the options, not only the cost, but the benefit, because the real key is this has to work right, even if it costs us money. I mean, we can't not have our 911 system serving the people. That's somebody's life. So we got to figure that out. But I do think coming back, did you have something else you wanted to ask?
Yeah, I was just going to add, I think all those are legitimate concerns that you brought up, and 911 is one of the most essential pieces of this government that we.
Absolutely.
I am all for cutting where we can, but the safety and urgency of that is not one. So I do think it needs to be a work session or a thought out process. So legitimate concerns, but I am glad or interested to hear too that Montgomery County is potentially cheaper and maybe another option. But priority one is making sure that we function, and then you guys have what you need.
Jerry's been talking with also Rodney, so we've got them more dialed into this now than we had before. Of course, the Sheriff's Department would also be part of what we would do.
I haven't had a concrete quote from anybody yet, but, you know, those are just numbers that have been thrown around.
Can we get dates and timeline for tomorrow night? I know we've got another work session tomorrow night, but if you all could pull some dates and times so that we'll know, okay, the deadline for this $1 million grant is August or September or whatever that is, and then, you know, what a timeline would have to look like for us to put together a package so we can know, and if it's going to impact what we're doing here, you know, figure that out.
Well, I'm sorry, you go ahead, Colin.
How long would it take to get information on a collaboration with RU? I mean, I feel like that's another really good option, and if we are doing a great job managing our own city, and we're, you know, we're very close in proximity,
Right.
It makes sense to vet that option as well.
So some of the things we looked at, I guess previously about 2.5 years ago, that was a topic of conversation. My understanding is that it just kind of fell by the wayside. You know, it's about getting their IT people together, our IT people together, but I think it's a very easy lift. Internally, I think we can support their infrastructure that they're going to need, and we have the space and we have some of the resources, and then they actually bring some resources to the table that we're not going to have. They have this camera system on campus that is phenomenal, and so we would have real-time information if an event happened on campus that we would not have the ability to communicate or share.
And I feel like those are things that we should already be kind of sharing to make sure that we're able to see and respond to any kind of big event like something that happened at Tech. I mean,
right. So if that happened, we would require us to put a physical body in their dispatch center to communicate that to us. And where if it was regionally hosted here or at RUPD, that information is real time and made relevant.
yeah, I'd really like to see.
Yeah, I was gonna say, of
Options
all
on
the
that.
partnerships, that kind of looks like one that
It does.
is the most interesting to look at.
One
really.
more question, and
Well,
maybe I'm wrong.
Let me follow up first.
Go ahead.
So what I was going to ask is, I know you were talking about what would qualify for grants, that regional piece. Can you find out about that too and let us know, would your collaboration with RU, would that count and make us available to have some of that grant money? Because I know we've talked before where staffing's an issue, we're trying to keep up with the technology on our own, that's an issue. So when we were first speaking about Pulaski, It was that newer equipment that would make us quicker, more responsive. So it sounds, I mean, that will not have changed. We're still going to need that. So that's why I'm curious if that relationship will qualify us for some of those monies and updates.
So I know a little bit about the grant, but if I remember reading the grant correctly, it was a collaborative effort between RUPD, Radford City, and then all the conglomerate that was already in Pulaski County that's established. Basically, Radford University and the city of Radford would join their already established center. So I don't know if that violates some of the conditions of the grant already, but I will check into it and have better.
Or would we qualify for something on our own?
Right, and so I don't know, I think that it was in front of the committee some time ago. I guess they held on to the award letter before issuing it out. So I don't know if that's retroactive, that it gives us the ability to even gain some of that money that was previously sent to this part of the state. But I will certainly check on all of it.
Our award letter came like 4 months after the award, and then shortened up the time frame. The work had to be done, I think, by the end of this summer, which
You're right.
doesn't give us hardly any time to evaluate. So we're moving pretty quickly now to look at alternatives here and then try to figure out what that cost is. Because we have a good center. We kept it modern. It's in a good building. People like it. You can go right out the door and run and get something to eat. You know, it's all very, very convenient to work. So the last thing we want is for our folks who've been with us to decide they don't want to go drive 20 miles or.
One last thing I wanted to ask about that I thought was an issue when I had visited the dispatch center years ago. The antenna that dispatches out to the radios. I thought we had an issue here in Radford, and we were using one in Fairlawn now, because that was the new one. Is that accurate?
So I'm not aware of all the antenna issues that we have had.
Okay.
I know we have tower issues that even regardless if we go with Pulaski County or not, there's still some tower issues that we face and some licensing issues.
Now, we
but-
did upgrade the towers significantly not that long ago, correct?
We did, and then this was when Jeff was here. We looked at whatever the issue was with Pulaski. I think that was resolved, at least that's what they told me, so. I don't.
If that had an impact on this, if we just chose not to go with them with having an antenna there?
Because I asked
Okay.
that question early on, whatever we do with Pulaski to bounce the
signal.
The signal back to us.
Okay.
Was not gonna be whether we
Okay.
went into this or not.
Because that had been something that had been discussed, even though it may be a separate issue, that was going to be part of unifying the network and all of that, and I just didn't want us to have gone down that path and then forget that piece as we go
So
forward.
even when I talked with them, or in RV 911, one of the things that they suggested was looking at Ingalls or even up on
Yeah.
farther up Tyler Avenue for a bigger tower for us to all share.
Would we be able, David, with our cell tower that's on the mountain, would we be able to utilize the new tower for an antenna, since that's going to be a much larger, more
Got any
powerful?
rights to it that we.
So we could do whatever we wanted to if we felt like that was the right
Both
place.
towers that are there, the one that's going up now and the one that's there now, minus the one that we take it down, we can do anything we want to
Okay.
with it. And then, of course, we own the tower up on Lovely Mount. It needs some structural improvements, and that's why we've been hoping, putting it out there that if any of these cell companies are interested in mounting on that maybe they might give us a deal
Yeah.
where they would put a tower up and turn it over.
Makes sense, because the cell towers are where they can get the greatest coverage anyway, so that might make sense since they're on our property and we can deal with that. But thank you, and
Yes,
I
sir.
know that's a lot of detail in this one particular area, but I think the time is the big issue for us.
It
If
is.
we've got a hard deadline facing us, then we got to figure out how we can backtrack from that. Appreciate that.
Yeah, Jerry, I don't have the breakdown, whatever, we've got due to have in there a regional radio system with Pulaski County, so in that $81,000 in your budget, that is supposed to be for that improvement.
Well, is that for the improvement, or is that the cost of the radios? We have a contract with the radios for about 5 years, I think.
I'm not sure who wrote the note, but that's what it says, so you might just check on that to make sure that
Yes,
the
sir.
note is still, this is under the professional services side, just to be sure we're both.
Yes, sir.
I'm assuming that it's that, so I want to make sure that we haven't left that out by some way. Or we go the other route, and that's do the improvements to the tower, Ingalls Mountain Tower.
Yes, sir.
I'd like to circle back a little bit to kind of where Jesse was going, and it's probably the least favorite comment or, I guess, question that I have to look at since I've been on council, and it is the COLA. You know, when I look over some of the numbers, we've been very good to our employees over some hard times, but if you look back over the last 3 years, it looks like there's been a 16% over the last 3 years. And if you stretch that out to 5 years, it's 19%. If accepted with the 4%, over 4 years would be 20% and 23% over 5 years. And that's tough. There's people in this room that I care about. There are people all over the city. It's the least favorite thing that I've had a hard pill swallowing, but when I look at kind of the numbers, that's hard for me. And when I look at, that it's going to cost $300,000 on the refinance of the revenue anticipation bond, and that's about, roughly similar to that increase, it's just tough. And like you said, and I totally understand. You're trying to be competitive with other localities, and it's a tough pull. I understand all arguments, but I do think, I know that I've personally not gotten raises in some slim years, and it looks like in 2021 we didn't either. It's tough, and that's something that I've looked at, and I know it's the most deserving people. So it's hard to take that, but that is something that I think we're going to have to really consider. Not popular, and I hate to bring it up, but it is something that I think we have to talk about.
The state raise is 3%, right? So the state raise is 3% from the Commonwealth for constitutional officers and anybody that would be under state employees for 24, 25. So that's just something to keep in mind, that's there. That's something we can revisit.
That's their suggestion?
Huh?
Is that their suggestion, is 3%?
I think it's mandated.
So they've
right?
budgeted for that within the state budget, and that comes through us, and you can explain it better than I. It's a kind of a requirement that it be paid to the constitutional officers, but they receive some state support for that. But we have to make up a difference on that regardless.
Define requirement.
Any state increase passes on to us. So any state employees that we have, DSS, constitutional offices, would get 3% no matter what.
So we have to do that.
We have to do that. And
Okay.
that's built into that budget, both the revenue
Yes,
and
just
expense
the
side.
state employees, not the city. Okay, thank you for clarifying.
And
Also,
some positions have both state and city money
Yes.
involved in them, and the city, the 3% only applies to the state side.
to the state part
The,
of the portion.
whatever we do applies to the city
Are
side.
there any employees outside of the constitutional officers that would apply to, as far as that get both state and city allotment? DSS, is that the only other?
Well, the treasurer's office has some that are,
We've got some hybrid.
They're
in the
hybrid.
constitutional, but as far as, we've got the housing person in DSS that
Yeah.
you work with CPMT is a city employee. I think all of the ones in DSS are state employees. Trying to think through all the departments. Yeah,
So
so I
let's-
don't think we've got anybody else that's a state employee.
So let's say that we dropped it down to 3%, just to make it easy. So the constitutional officers, their raises would be paid for, and we would not have to add any. So if we made it 4%, we would have to cover that 1%?
No.
And
no, I know
then
what
the
you're saying now.
state would cover the 3%,
So,
right?
let's say it's $10,000 salary.
Yeah.
So $5,000 of it is a state salary. In that $5,000, it would be 3% increase.
On the
for state
5.
money. The other 5, if it's a city position, it would be
Increase
2%,
whatever we
4%,
decide.
6%, whatever
Okay.
you do, but you don't make up the difference on the state
Okay.
side. We only did that one time. It was a benefit thing that came up with VRS that we tried to pick up everybody's employees. That's been 10 years ago. If it's a state identified, it's paid with state revenue through comp board or through DSS or one of those programs, that's where the 3% that the state's giving now goes to it, and that's all there is.
5% in your scenario would be whatever we choose to make the COLA, if anything.
4% in
Yes.
the COLA just applies to the city-funded positions,
So also,
whether it's whole or part or whatever it is,
I think you said
and
before.
part-times.
I think you said before that everybody else, Montgomery County, other localities are doing 5%, and we were going 1% lower, but still staying competitive. Can we see what they've done over the past 5 years? Because like Seth said, that's a huge percentage that we've done. I don't even get 3% every year.
And I do think
so,
it.
I know that we want to give as much as we can, but if other localities did nothing for 3 years and then they did, 5 the past couple of years, we're still 10%
I can
over
say
that.
in
I
5
mean,
years, we have not been more than anybody else.
No. And the other piece is
Wondering
a lot
because
of things that were
it's a
volunteer in
difficult
the county have
conversation
come
to
on as
have,
paid.
and I want to know what,
The year we had zero, it was a tough year, but.
We did
The
bonuses.
coronavirus money that came in, we were able to do bonuses.
Yeah.
For those that were involved in coronavirus, so that, like, public safety folks and that kind of thing did get some money, kept us competitive that way, but everybody
well,
else
that's a
was zero.
tough, I'm glad I didn't have to make that decision on who was affected by the coronavirus and who was not, because everybody
Pretty much
was.
the language is.
Bonus for everybody. We couldn't do raises for everybody.
Okay, well, anyway, I just would want to see, we said that we're only going 1% below, but I'd like to see overall what some of these people are doing over the past
See what I
5
can
years.
find.
I know
may
that
have
might
a
be
history.
difficult, but I mean, if you add all this up, would you say it was, Seth, 20-some%? I mean, including a 5% this year, that's a ton.
Well, that, and I would like to see those numbers too, but I also think every locality's
I was gonna
financial
say that too.
situation is
It's
different.
different than,
Yeah.
no, and that's a very good point also. So even though we've, had some struggles, we've still given a lot. So now, because we've given a lot, we got to make tough decisions.
And that doesn't mean that, this is forever. This is,
No,
we're
it's
in a
not right
short-term-
now until we.
We're in a short-term fix, and we have to make hard choices, just like
Yeah.
we have to in our households.
Right.
Yes.
I've not gotten a raise there in a lot of years, but
You gotta buy fruit where it's cheap, and you
Right.
have to get the deal on the
Yep.
meat, and you have to do things like that. So
I do
it's-
think it's tough where we will have some people that work in the same offices that will receive a 3% raise regardless. That state piece makes it a little tough for us to go much below that simply because there's some equity issues there. But having said that, I mean, certainly I think we can look at all the numbers and try to figure out where we are with that. I know the risk is, again, if we choose to go less, then it may hit us in other ways down the road, and we just take that risk if we decide to do that. We may have more unfilled positions, it may cost you in different ways. That's the trickier part.
Yeah, philosophically, I try to include, as you all know, for the years you've worked with me, we've tried to include the COLA within the budget to start with. I don't like to budget backwards and then balance the budget on the employees, because we are a people business. We
Yep.
just want to make sure that we do that, and our employees are going to be happy with anything that's considered. So, we've got.
think about too, the people in our community, like I said, we worked really hard to make sure that we could give the increases when we could. I mean, because we understand how vital they are to our well-being. But I also think it's a tough pill to swallow at this point, because we're asking more of our residents. They're not necessarily getting the same COLA increases, and the state is not going to drive our hand as a city. I'm just not going to be put over a barrel by them. There's things we can control and things we can't control, and we're dealing with a lot of things that we're unable to control, so the things we can, we just have to be mindful of. So, and I hate it too, because, no one likes this. This is a horrible position to be in, but it's a temporary position, and I would ask for everyone to remember when things were good,
Yes.
we had you, and we want to get back to that, but we're going to require some patience. When I mentioned that everyone's going to be hurting a little bit, I mean, all of us are going to struggle a little bit with some of these tougher choices, but it's for the larger good of our community. Short-term, some short-term compromise for hopefully long-term gain.
Right.
Can we talk agency funding for a minute? All of these things are incredibly important in different ways, whether it is serving our citizens or dealing with particularly challenging issues or economic development. I did have a question about NRVCS, New River Valley Community Services. In the write-up, we talk about a 14% increase over fiscal year 2024. But as I look at the numbers, and I might be wrong, it looks like we're going from 61,000 to 132,000. So is this year's number wrong, or is it a 100% increase?
Yeah, remember, they always ask for more.
Yeah.
And we have to dial it back, so the.
So that's
amount-
just the request, but the number here, is it still 132, or what we're saying, we haven't set an amount?
No, New Raleigh Community Services is 132.
But what that we gave them this year is 61, and we haven't set what we're going to give them for next year. Is that accurate?
I need to see it.
What is
We give them
Verge?
10% over last year, so they asked for 132.
So we would be at about 68,000.
Go to that number there, whatever it is in the budgets, make sure it's the right one.
I'm sorry if I'm confused, but
No, I don't have.
Well,
the-
no, I want the same answer. What is,
Yeah, that's
David, what is Verge?
it is a new business piece out of Roanoke. It's the Economic Alliance. It used to be called something else, and it's a new name for that now.
What is that?
So it's I want to say it was the Roanoke, New River Valley Economic Partnership piece or something like that. I can't remember the name, but it is an economic marketing piece that we work with to try to get additional grants for business and things along that line. Melissa, are you familiar with Verge at all? Okay. I know what it is, but I don't remember what name it replaced. It is an evolution of one of the Roanoke, New River Valley Economic Partnership pieces. That's Verge. But before we get to that, so the correct number, the actual agency plan for community services is about 68,000. Is that accurate? 67, something?
Got me doubting my number, hold on.
Why does it not say 60? I didn't understand why. It says it's double, but we're really only giving this.
That's the request, which I get now. These are just the requests. That's not necessarily what he's budgeted yet, and I'm mistaken on that. I thought it was what was budgeted.
Well, I would have thought the same thing.
Because everything else looks pretty good. There's Mountain View Humane, I know we've gone way up on it, or we may have gone up on it,
Well,
but we need to
juvenile
figure that out.
detention is double also.
Yeah.
I mean, I can
But
guess why that
that's
is.
client-based, I think. That's the only thing on that. We got to figure that one out.
That's required
Says
anyway,
in
isn't
how
it?
many kids?
It's come down, though, and so I don't know if that just varies so much year to year because you got more people in detention services.
Also, Verge,
Yeah, I was looking at Verge.
So Verge, I can look up what it is, but it used to have another name in Roanoke. It was like the Economic Partnership.
Verge is that tie-in with Virginia Western Community College, it's the business
Yeah.
school down there. It's and they're trying to advance these programs up here.
Yeah.
They've gotten tied in with Radford University. We had not typically been funding them, but it looked like what they were doing with some clients and how little amount it was. We
The
just-
RAMP program is a
is
grant
the other
program which will get new startups going. And so that's the big piece with that. I know that that's one to drive new business. So that's a tricky one. We cannot fund it, but I think it has a direct impact to potentially having a new company in the region.
I'd like to see those impacts and have these people in here. And I know they're small amounts, but 3, 4, 5, that they start to add up. And I actually had, and I know that they're a big one. But I would like to invite them as actually onward. And I know that we'd like to partnership with them with a lot of the things we have going forward. And I'm certainly not suggesting that we cut them, but it would be useful for me to have these organizations. I kind of want to see the results of them at some point too, to make sure that we are getting the bang for our buck, because economically, I know that that's a focus point for all of us. But also, if we're paying, we'd like to see some results. Not saying there's not at all. Just saying that I'd like to see those and highlight them if they are there.
Yeah.
Mountain View Humane, that's a huge jump as well.
But that's just ask. Is that what you've proposed?
Just-
Yeah.
The spade and neuter program
Yeah.
that the police department uses.
So we think it's going to be 5,000 this year, or we think it's going to be,
Why has it
okay?
gone up that much?
Because we got
Why are
an
they asking?
out-of-control pet population?
We also only had a half a year with them because had somebody pass away or something in the organization, and they were down for a while and didn't get started back up again until mid-year. And so it was only a half a year of funding for us. That's why last year, that's why it jumped up this year.
Well, half a year's
Yeah.
500, so a full year would be 1,000 if I do 500 plus 500, and this
Whatever
is
it was.
5,000, so,
Yeah, we didn't have as many and also did not participate but like just a month.
so
or
it's
two.
like per animal that they budget? Okay. So
Yeah.
if we decided to only give them 2,500, are they gonna cut us off at 50 cats, or? I mean. That's funny, but it's a
But maybe
huge
what we
jump.
could
I'm just
do
trying to figure
is-
it out.
love being here, won't you?
budget an amount and then revisit it if we've run out of that amount in like 4 months or something, come back to it, because
Give us services for what we give them.
I think these are real expenses, so that, I don't think it's just like an agency fund where they can find it elsewhere.
Okay.
So just to be clear, where it says funding for 25, this is not what we're giving them,
Some of them, apparently it is.
the request. So I want to know, like, what is in our budget for them versus what,
Our hypotheticals?
yeah.
These are the requests. These are what is based on the services. These are what match the state-required funding for some of them or the services that we use. Anything that's not starred, you can cut back, but we will have less services, obviously, or no services, depending on what you want to do.
Starred.
The one,
ECS.
there's a few of them that have got. if it's got
Juvenile
star
detention
beside it,
home.
Like New River
Through
Community
here.
College, New River Community
next page
Action,
over.
Community Services.
I was like,
Right on community services then? Okay.
The amount, 132, 216, 217 is the amount New River Valley Community Services asked for, because that's what the state requires them to come in for. So
But-
the amount that we would fund is 10% over 61,599, which was 67,758. So there's that much savings, $64,000 in that number.
Woohoo!
okay, so, well, I mean,
That's something.
I will say for Mountain View, I've actually utilized their services, and they are very cost efficient for people. Veterinary bills are extremely high, and I do know a lot of people use that. I mean, obviously, that's a high jump, but
Well, and
that
the-
is a pretty valuable one in my personal
and
experience.
I like
But
the fact that they actually tattoo their animals. so
Yeah,
they
they-
can,
yeah.
You can tell if somebody.
Side of it is if we only, say, supported 100 animals instead of 400, we could potentially have 10 times the problem because there's 300 unfixed cats and dogs out there that create a bigger issue, and then it just.
So does this also fund, I know that they'll have different clinics and different communities can participate in those. Is this really, this number just for what comes
Through our
through
shelter.
our shelter? Or is this
just through the shelter.
some of the participation?
We don't give this number just out. They send a bill to PD and they look at it and make sure that Adele has run, 100 spayed and neutered through it, whatever the cost is, and that's what they're paid.
Okay.
So it may not.
So it's in our budget, and then they will bill, and then we pay them.
I think there's a cost either way you go, because if you don't do it, you're probably going to have an even larger increase in the unhomed population, so that creates a bigger problem as you go down. But it is $5,000, a lot of money to spend over 500. So, I mean, that's the tricky part. It's just whether we do it this year, or then we've got to revisit it and have an even bigger number in 25, 26, 26, 27.
So I know, obviously, if we didn't use the full $5,000, we get that back. But what would the situation be for PD if we meet that limitation? Say you get just an explosion, and then people were to continue to come after we've maxed that. Would you, at that point, turn down that service, or would we continue to take the animals on?
We're gonna get billed.
We just got to find the money.
Right. That's yeah.
Can we talk to them and see if they'll start spaying and neutering the deer population?
Yeah.
I'd be able to find some donors
Number
to
would be considerably higher on that one.
Yeah.
about a serious issue with the deer.
So I do think that a good topic was brought up, and that is, throughout this next year, it would be nice to have a presentation.
Absolutely.
For all of us to be familiar with exactly the specific services.
It's just been a little while.
It has been, but, I mean, we're-
Yeah, I think it's good to have those folks in. And I know Onward, I want to say they came and presented to us 2 years ago, so it may have been before you all were on council. But that's,
So actually, Onward's been here, was
since
here
then.
last year.
Was it? I thought, I didn't remember if it was last year or the year before that.
I mean, it's a large number. So, and I mean, granted, all these agencies serve a purpose, but really maximizing and seeing those results and having something to show for that.
And a perfect example, that video that we have of the West Radford Commerce Park with the building on it, that's an Onward production. Some of the work that's happening with Oronzi and some of our other manufacturers, that's produced through Onward as well. So, there's value there. I don't know that you can say that equals this. Once we get a client in that space, we may say, gosh, our investment in Onward brought us $1 million a year client. So it's hard to know. But I agree. I mean, I think having those people in is great. I don't think we've had much with the airport folks coming in to see us in a while. I think that's been a long while. And that'd be good to talk with. And of course, we just had Kevin Bird here with the Regional Commission and go from there. I know at some point we need to have a philosophical discussion about the passenger rail station.
Stop, what was the starred ones on here?
They're
That ones that were
Yeah, so.
required by state, okay.
Yep.
And also, real quick, for the New River Valley Housing Trust, we have not voted on that yet, is that correct? I know, Melissa, there was a presentation about that, but do we have any idea when that decision will be made?
Well, if we didn't have any objections, they were gonna move on forward with it, so if we want to not do, we just wouldn't be involved in their projects going forward, so.
You would need to know that if we're not
So
interested.
that's a $24,000 investment that could end up in about a $600,000 investment. Now, it's a 5-year period.
Right, and who controls that investment?
I have no way to really way
Yeah.
to judge since it'll be their first year, but I do know they're going through the housing consortium, and they've already got a project, I think it's in Blacksburg.
Yeah.
There's 2 projects that are funded this current with Blacksburg and Pulaski, so those have been funded.
And ours are a couple of years out, so I think it's 3, yeah. So 3 to 4 years, yeah. And so, I mean, it's one of those that, yeah, if you cut it off, you might save some money now, but are we doing something now that then costs us 10 times as much, 20 times as much down the road?
Possible to get the ask versus what's in our budget for all of these, just as a separate document? What the ask is?
The ask is all this.
Right, but-
Except there's an error on that 132. That's their ask, but what's in the budget should have been less.
Okay.
But could we see that like side by side on those? So, because if, just like, here's this brain injury solutions, here's their ask, this is what we're funding, and just go all of them down.
This is the ask. I didn't cut anything.
So the ask is what we're
The only
funding.
one that's wrong is 132, because it's 10% over the 64,000.
So juvenile
Okay.
detention is going to go back up to double then of what it was this last year. And that's simply based on utilization.
That is required. Yeah, just to be clear, so Fairview Home is required
Yep.
for the residents over there, and that's an agreement that we got into with social services programming. I think Vicki serves on that board for us. And New River Valley Community Services is required, but that's not 132, it's 161. It's 67,758, which is a 10% increase over this current year. New River Valley Juvenile Detention Home is required. It's the way it's set up by the charter and required by the state to have that program. The New River Valley Health District, that's a big one, but that's been growing since the pandemic. That really no choice in that. A lot of these they come out this way. How the funding is set up is long before all of us. It's whatever came through the state programs. And the New River Community College is set. That money goes into their capital fund. That is actually a state requirement as well. Virginia's First is not state requirement, but that's the agreement we have for those that are, I don't remember who's on that group, maybe you, Seth, I can't remember. Whoever's on that, that's our stock each year, basically, to stay in the program. You can ask to get out of it, but you have to pay your way to get back out, and about impossible to get back in. And then that participation committee, so that, those, you add up the economic development ones, well, they're pretty expensive, because you got 5,000, 23,000, another 5,000, 1,100, 1,200,
They
passenger rail,
go up every year.
17,000, all of those together.
They have the same pressures because they
We've
almost
been
all have
in and
staff.
out of the airport commission
We're gonna have to
for
do some shrimping, I think.
3 decades, 4 decades.
Me, but I'm one person.
But, no, but I'm
Of
saying,
Mountain
I think
View
the
by the
hardest part
number
for
of-
me,
Kids, animals,
Yeah, it's a
Okay.
3-year rolling average, right? Callista and I go to those.
3 years back. So the 3 prior years that do the average, and that's what you pay for the next
We've
year?
been really low for a while because we didn't have anybody in, and then it bounced bounce back as they go back 3 years and look forward.
Okay, so they're taking 24, 23, and 22 and doing an average and then multiplying it by whatever their, okay.
Housing trust is a new thing, and we do need more
A day
information.
rate.
I know Melissa's been
Okay.
working on it, I've heard a little bit about it on the regional.
But we've been, gosh, the lowest we have been, you can look and see,
Yeah, it was low
gosh, we
for,
dropped down to $11,437, and then 8,000.
well, it was 8,000 last year.
Yeah, so it just about doubled for this upcoming year.
I'm very curious what all benefit we're getting from the airport, like, and I really just don't know for that.
What airport?
It's,
Don't some of our businesses ship out through the airport?
yeah, the 1,600
shipping?
flights, and that what
I
that
mean-
one was? Yeah, 1,600 flights go out. It includes partial support for the, what's it called?
Free trade zone?
Free trade, yeah, foreign
Yep.
trade zone, free trade zone up there.
I mean, I think it'd be good to have them come in and tell us
Which
these stories,
airport?
because you're right. That's one we haven't heard from for a while. I do know, and I mean, I don't know specifically which company, but I know some people that have to ship their stuff by air. It goes out through that airport. So that's a big piece. We're not paying their shipping, but you don't have an airport, you don't have the ability to ship unless you take it around.
Cole Morgan, Third Security,
Yeah.
Huntington are the three I know of right offhand.
I'd be shocked if Aranzi's not going to be using them with the new product
They
they're
could be.
building
We
here.
haven't seen the numbers on what's coming through. I do know that 1,600 number is up. It's the support of all the New River Valley communities have been in. We got out of it one time, sorry we did, and got back into it again. We've been into it, probably back into it for the last 10 years. Pretty much everything that goes into it supports the operation. It's kind of like transit, so the money you put into it supports FTA expenditures. Those runway improvements are multi-million-dollar jobs. I think it was like, the last one was, what, $20 million? Something like that. It took the local matches to make that all go.
I mean, it's kind of like providing roads, you know? You don't want to say you're providing a road just for a business, but if you don't have the road, that business isn't going to locate there. So that's a big piece.
Got to make sure the cost is proportionate for the usage, and I think
Yeah.
that's kind of what them coming.
It's based on
and doing that.
population, right, David?
Why don't we, y'all
Well,
got
I
some
mean, can we
questions?
get
Why don't
back
we
in if-
drop Verge back to $1,000 and see how it does this upcoming year?
Yes.
That's a lot for only 6
I do think it'd be
clients.
good for them to come talk to us, because it is a new entity that's based out, I think it's an evolution of what was there before. And that's a good one to talk to, because there's some real possibility for some big grants that could bring in some fairly big players.
Yeah, it's got some new money. I know Radford University is working with them through the hub. That's mostly, I think, what they were presenting this year, but like I say, it's only 6 clients, so, you know, maybe it'd be fine to just drop that back to, you know, if you want to do an increase to $1,500 or something, say, hey, you know, we'll watch it for this upcoming year. I don't have any problem with that.
I know the mayor had mentioned it.
That's $70,000 worth of savings there.
Yeah.
That's a COLA, that's a percent on your COLA.
Say, and I know the mayor has mentioned it, I feel comfortable if we were to walk away from that at this point with a cut. Obviously, that's up for all of our decisions, but if we were going to make one, I think that would be one.
Let me tell you a little bit about my heartache over all of this. We've been part of trying to bring the rail effort to the New River Valley for a long time. A lot of this is completely out of our hands. It's being controlled pretty much out of Richmond. David and I sit on the board, but for the most part, we're kind of being told this is where you're going to be, this is what you're going to do, this is what's going to happen. I think it's gotten to a point where I'm concerned with the money we're spending, because we're still probably 5 to 7 years out from having a facility. So all of this is legal, support for running the authority, things along that line. It's not really serving our citizens at this point. It is crucial to getting, that money has to be spent to get a rail station here. It's just, it's not in Radford. It's a tricky one. I've had heartache over it because, you know, I had really had grander aspirations for us all the way around. So I can't argue for it. I can't argue completely against it. I brought it up because I knew that's a concern, and we're looking at hard times, but You know, I'm open to discussion on that, and I know David and I have talked about it as board members.
Well, I'm curious, if we're paying into it, is there a profit share percentage when things do go up? Because that seems
Not
to be
likely.
fair.
There is going to be more cost than this. This is the lowest amount this will likely ever be.
But
because-
they'll also be driving revenue for them
But the revenue
as
will
well.
probably go right, like ticket revenue and all that, will probably have to go into the operation of the station. I don't see us ever getting $1 out of this. That has never been discussed as something that this would be like Virginia's
But I'm
First.
saying the
where you-
community that it settles in.
Oh, yeah, the
is
community
going
that it
to
settles in will
receive-
receive benefit from people getting on and off the train there. No, I agree.
Yes, and we're paying for that. And I understand we're paying for also the convenience for our folks to be able to ride, and I get all that. But it just seems like if we're paying into this and we're paying in it years without it even really being profitable at all or impacting us, it seems like is there a better agreement that we might be able to barter on
You know,
this?
My hope had been would be some way to control the cost between now and the time the station is actually looking to be constructed, so that it wasn't going to be such a large number. We don't have another meeting, though, until after the budget. That's the only thing as far as, we don't meet in April or March. The next meeting's not going to be till May. So we really don't have the ability to talk about that. I had planned to bring that up, but our March and April meetings were canceled. I don't know what you all want to do. I mean, it could be one of those that we stick with it a little while longer and then we look to change that if that makes sense. But that's a big number. $8,500, not the end of the world, but it's a number we have to look at. And
I would rather see that $8,500 going towards a COLA or in our reserves,
Yeah.
personally.
What is-
And a little bit of background, at the time the original study that was done, it was going to be more centrally located, the station. It's getting further and further away. But the other piece of it is, and that's always hard to tell, is when you're looking at tying in transit and the other modes of operation.
super
what's gonna
complicated.
tie together, and ultimately, Radford University has got I don't remember how much their amount is.
theirs is
but
the
they-
same as ours.
Is it the same
Yeah.
amount? Right now, this gets us a seat on the
Percentage.
board to know what's going on. If we pull back, we won't have a seat on the board to know where anything's going, so.
We will,
Like
we,
Mayor said, it
pulling out
probably
means
good
we'll
for
have
at
no
least 1 more
control,
year to
no
see what's
discussion, no nothing with it.
Sounds like we're not getting that
It's like we don't
anyway,
have any
so-
now.
Limited. I will
Yeah,
say, that's
we-
been one of my
don't think-
frustrations. We voted on a logo, and that's been about it, and officers, but we've been told by the state where it would be, what size it would be, what's gonna happen with that, so.
Would we need to make a motion or something on that, or is that just
no,
something we give you to?
I would think the council would have to make a decision and be affirmative to that decision. That, don't you?
I'm ready.
I would agree.
Yeah, because right now, that's right, because we do have an agreement with them, so if we move away from that, we would need to make a motion to either suspend our agreement with them. I don't know that it's got a date or anything on it, I'll have to look back and see.
But that's not something we have to do tonight. This is something we can
No, I mean,
revisit here
It's
pretty
not
soon,
gonna make
but.
that much difference,
yeah.
so.
More information as to exactly what we're paying for currently? Like, could they give us an idea of what our contribution is
The
doing?
85 right now is going to the planning.
Yeah, and
the
legal.
and the staffing of the.
So a perfect example, they got a sheet from the state defining the roles, and legal has to go through that and figure all that out. So there's a lot of legal costs with that.
Right.
Again, I'm struggling because it's not as we had originally envisioned. Now, it doesn't mean it won't be, but that clarity is not likely to happen in the next 3 or 4 years, you know, as I see it, based on what we've been told. So I think that's the hard part. If there were a way to pause most of the spending for 3 years till we got to that point, I'd be a lot happier, but I don't know that that's
But our
possible.
residents are not.
No,
I mean,
there's no benefit right now, other than coming someday, there would be a train station.
But even coming someday, they can still get on and buy, you
Right.
know, they can still buy a ticket.
I think
do
the
think-
benefit is still there when at this point, I mean, I don't know any increased benefit with our seat at the table, I guess is
Not
my
coming to
understanding,
Radford.
and maybe there is.
If it was
but-
coming to Radford, I
for
would
it
think
because
about, but
we
it's
really haven't had that
100%
big a
not coming to
voice.
Radford, so.
The only piece I will say, and this is a much bigger picture that we've not talked about. Ultimately, it makes sense for the New River Valley to have a much more unified transit system. And I had hoped at one time this might be a central location. Now, everything that is projected is there's a little small 3,000 square foot building right now for the train station. So there is nothing else there that's being paid for that would be a transit hub and all those kinds of things. So it's not what we had thought, and like I said, I don't know how that's going to evolve over the next few years.
And the other big piece of that is where it goes, the location it's in now or proposed will never be able to make it to.
No.
Realistically would not be able to make it to Bristol, and Bristol and that area wants to be able to run from there here. So that's one of the pieces that may be worth waiting another year to be sure where that goes. Because if we get out of it, we're out of it. At least while we're in, you've got to vote, and if it doesn't end up going that way and it's more in the Blacksburg area or something, then it may not be as.
Because I've struggled with this. I've asked a bunch of questions. I mean, this is a nearly $500 million investment by the state ultimately, and trying to figure out what that looks like and what our part is. And ultimately, we don't know what the long-term investment for the citizens of Radford would be.
Sounds like we don't have a place at the table, to be honest.
We have a place, it's just not that effective a place. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
We're trying.
What's the
gave-
process to make an official decision on that? When would we do that?
To it
Come back?
here as we go through the budget, but I don't think it's something we have to do tonight. I think there's more information we need to get.
Yeah, as long as it's before the actual budget is voted on.
I mean,
I'm
David's
good with that.
aware, I'm aware. I mean, that's something I've been concerned about for a while, as we're looking at cutting other important
One quick thing,
Ask about something else that I wanted, like to know the answer now. This new River Valley Housing Trust Fund where we didn't pay anything ever, and now we have $24,000, remind me?
Melissa, tell them quickly about the housing trust in summary.
It's a regional collaboration that each locality we've received funding through Department of HCD, and we've received funding to create this housing trust fund.
Okay.
Each locality, based on population, will receive a certain amount of money over a certain.
So I remember the graph now. Okay, I wanted to make sure that's what that was.
Ultimately, it will support a Radford project in 2028.
There was different amounts that people were paying over the next, and there was a spreadsheet of, yeah, okay. I just wanted to make sure. So that's going to be for the next how many years after that? And it fluctuates, right? 5 years. Okay.
It doesn't fluctuate.
Oh, okay.
It'll be the same over the 5 years.
Okay, so it's going to be that same amount for the next, okay.
I will send you all some brief homework based
Thank
on
you.
Verge, Humane Society, New Valley Community Services, and be sure. Bob, are you aware, is there anything else in New Valley Community Services, New Valley Community Action? New, NRVCS. The ask is one thing, and what we put in is usually the amount plus 10%, I think is what the localities have been trying to do.
Yes.
And then we've been telling the state, that's all we can do, and the state's been, at this point, has been providing additional funds to make it all go.
That is correct. That's right.
Make sure because Bob's our representative on that, I'll give you all of something there tomorrow, and I'll double check these numbers to be sure that what's in the book is what we've got over in but it looks like for sure we've got somewhere around $75,000 in savings just in cutting that out.
Well, wait, real quick, to confirm for me, I know we were going between the 15th and 16th for the other meeting.
Well, let's,
What other meeting?
we can do, yeah, I was
Okay.
going to say, we'll be back here plenty. We don't know yet,
Or y'all
yeah.
won't be so rushed to get ready before your next meeting.
Either I have to mark my calendar. So you think it'll be
Okay.
the 15th or 16th?
I think it's going to be Tuesday.
The 16th.
16th. Does that work for everybody?
Yeah,
For
just because if not, it.
Not the 15th, please. 15th, I'll be
yeah.
out of here, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Would it be possible with the $1 million or so in savings
I've missed the
from
last 3.
positions for us to see where those positions are, to put together a list that's all of that, so we can figure out?
Best on that. Most of
I know, but I mean, I think that's helpful to us to know, and if somebody says, okay, you saved $1 million, is that Parks and Rec, is that Public Works, is that, where's it hitting the most, what's happening? I think that would be helpful. I don't necessarily need it tomorrow night, but before,
Positions are assistant manager, it's a finance, a person over in the finance area. It's a human resource person. It is several positions in police department through their restructuring. It's the old position Basil had, which was.
try to help us get something together so we can look at it and talk it through, because there are costs when we don't fill positions too. I mean, there's things that we're choosing to give up by doing that, and I think that's important just for us to make an intentional decision about, so nobody can say, I didn't realize that by voting that way, save $1 million, we lost this, and whatever that happens to be. Does anybody else have anything else for the next couple of minutes before we take a little break? Well, thank you all very much.
If y'all see something else, send me a quick note, and I'll try to have it for you tomorrow night, and if not, I can send you an email back. If it's good for everybody, I'll send it to everybody to try to help you out. I've been through it, I'm going back through it another 8th or 9th time, whatever it is, to double check everything. So many things are fixed, as you saw by
Yep.
going through. A lot of departments are just down to postage and, some travel. There is some conferences, education there, but a lot of those aren't going to be used. They're there because either there's a state requirement to keep a license of some kind that y'all heard from the Commissioner of Revenue's office. That's also the same thing for code enforcement and building officials, that they have to attend a number of things to keep their licensing to be able to the job that they do and we do. Same thing over in police, fire, and those other kinds of things.
Would it be possible to go back to the state level at any level to see if there is financing available for that bond or that whatever loan we call it for the revenue anticipation?
There's nothing. They don't.
There's nothing at all that we don't think we can get a slightly better interest rate?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, because that really the only thing that's left out there now is school funding through BPSA. There's not anything else. So when our financial advisors sent us out looking for that, or when they went out for that, they got the best pool of dollars. And
Just wanted to make sure, because that's a number that's there that's causing us some challenge too. All right, well, we will take a 5-minute break real quick, and then we'll come back and get our regular meeting started. Thank you.